Hi, my name's Dave Winterfeld. I'm psychic, clairvoyant and medium. I've been self-employed for the last 10 years now, working across most of the UK, working both doing one-to-ones, doing shows and events, both with hearing and deaf audiences using sign language. Yeah, that's me. That's what I do. I suppose when I was sort of back in the day, there was, I didn't really have any thoughts on it all. There was nothing that, I mean, I remember Mystic Meg on the telly as a kid, and she'd sit there talk about, where she used to do a thing on the lottery about celebrating and all that kind of stuff. But never really had any thought on anything other than that. It was just one of those, it was almost like watching an advert for, for a drain cleaner or something, for a kitchen cleaner or something. It didn't register with me at all that anything to do with mediums or, I don't know, psychics or whatever they were at that point. It didn't register at all. I haven't got any recollections of even conversations surrounding psychics or mediums or anything like that. There's not even times where I can recall even it having been a topic, So yeah, it didn't register life-wise even slightly. Sort of ghost stories and stuff like that as a kid, there was loads of those, staying at your friends' houses, and like the boogeymen walking up the stairs and all those kind of noises and that kind of stuff. But it never really factored in as that being anything other than, ooh, it must be haunted then. I wasn't a believer in ghosts. I wasn't a disbeliever, when you're a kid. Same as you did or didn't believe in Father Christmas as well, a lot of the time, I suppose. But it wasn't ever something that I had much going on with in my life. There was occasionally when you're a kid and you think there's something under your bed and all that kind of stuff. But even for ghost stories and those kind of things, I haven't got anything similar to that either. The only thing that I have ever thought, oh, that was weird, was my nan waking me up the morning of her funeral when I was 11. That was odd. And I don't know whether she was there or whether she wasn't. I just remember hearing her voice saying to me, come on, Duck, time to get up now. Be quiet, don't wake anybody else up. That was the only thing that I can ever pinpoint as being anything even close to what I do now. But that was as I was waking up, and I just always assumed, it was just a dream sort of feel, So never had any sort of experiences of seeing anything or sensing anything along those lines. There was a past life recollection sort of feel from a disaster event that happened the teacher was talking about it in school, that resulted in me being able to sort of say, oh, well, that was where this happened and that happened. But whether that was me recalling something or whether that was actually me remembering a past life or something, I still couldn't say. The whole situation started with driving over to Bristol, from Newport to Bristol, to go and do a cash and carry shop. Went and picked up my partner at the time, As I walked into the house, started to feel a little bit breathless. Was a little bit strange that the breathlessness had kicked in, because I hadn't done anything strenuous. I wasn't doing anything sort of other than just walking up the drive. Got into the house, was feeling this just like a anxiety sort of feel, like I was having a panic attack. Went into the cash and carry shop, went off and did a full push in the massive trolley with the 48 toilet rolls and the 500 tins of baked beans and all that kind of stuff. So carried all of that off back into the car, drove back over to the other side of Bristol, dropped off my partner, drove back home to Wales, carried it all up the stairs, still feeling this breathlessness and this sort of anxiety, strange anxiety sort of feeling. Didn't have anything else going on other than that feel. Thought, right, I need to calm down, need to chill myself out. So I thought, right, okay, I'm gonna have a pint of sherry. So I did. I'd been to the cash and carry, I'd bought a nice big bottle of sherry, so I gave myself a pint of Harvey's Bristol Cream. I had that, thought that would chill me down and would cure what I thought was a panic attack. Went off to bed, settled myself in, still couldn't rest, couldn't settle. Something in my head kept saying, something's wrong, something's wrong. I had that feeling that something was going extra above this panic. So I thought, right, better ring the doctor, just to get a second opinion on it, because I felt like my pulse was rapid as well. GP out of hours said, okay, well, you better come over. So they sent a car over to pick me up about an hour or two later. So I got to the doctor's about 2:30 in the morning. So this had all started at 5:30 in the evening, and 2:30 in the morning, I'm off in the doctor's surgery. So I walk in, put myself down. She puts the cuff on my shoulder, puts a blood pressure monitor on me, and she's tapping away on a computer. She looks back at the monitor, picks up the phone, dials 999 and says, "Why didn't you tell me you were so ill?" Well, I didn't realise I was quite that ill. Still didn't know what was going on. I didn't know that the numbers on the thing of 220 beats per minute for a pulse is acceptable. I didn't realise that was a thing, you know. So ambulance crew, they arrived, and that's where everything starts to go foggy there. I can vaguely remember the ambulance crew. Apparently it was 45 minutes or so before, so they could stabilise me before taking me off to the hospital as well. So finally get into the hospital, spent 3 days on oxygen and just being cared for around the clock, really, but still not sure what was going on. I didn't understand what it was that could have caused it all and what it all was. Finally, a week later, I've been off walking around the hospital. I've been, visitors have come in. I've gone off to the coffee shop. I've been and visited a friend that had a baby as well the same week. And everything I was absolutely fine. Felt no problems whatsoever. It was completely okay. Had the scan done on my chest, where they inject you with the dye and all that kind of thing to see what your lungs are, to see what was going on. And the results of the scan came back. And the only way that I knew that the scan had come back was the nurse in charge at the time cornered me as I came out the toilet, and she grabbed hold of me and said, "Right, get to your bed and don't move. You're on bed rest." And I was like, "Well, what's the matter? What's going on? I'm okay, I'm fine." The results of your scan are back, and it wasn't good. And I was like, "What does that mean? What have you found?" So I was then assigned to my bed, and that's where I had to stay. To get a consultant to come around and see you within the hospital is sort of, you can wait a couple of days for that. But once the scan results had gone off to the consultant, he'd passed it around the rest of the team. And throughout the day, I had 5 different consultants come and visit me with their teams of people. And my friend was there with me for the day. He was sat there with me and heard all of these conversations. And each one of these consultants, as they were the end of the conversation came about, they all, as they were leaving me, said, "Well, thanks very much, Thing, but somebody's looking after you." And each of them said it. There was an Iraqi doctor, there was the Indian guy, there was the German fella, and they all said, "Somebody's looking after you," in the same way. And with the last one, I turned and looked at my friend and I said, somebody's looking after you. And he said, yeah, I've noticed the same thing. He'd noticed that they'd all said this same thing as their parting shot, which was really weird. So I was retelling that story then to a very close friend who said, well, maybe somebody is looking after you. Why don't you come with me to EBGB Club? We'll see if somebody's giving you, see if somebody is looking after you and giving you, see if we can get you a message. And I thought, oh no, that's not my bag of chips at all. No, thanks. There'll be tie-dye, there'll be nag champa, there'll be all that kind of stuff going on in there. And I thought, no, that's not for me. I don't want to go and join in with that, thanks. Couple of months passed, and a few months passed, and basically then didn't have anything better to do of an evening. So I finally gave in and I said to her, all right, then I'll come along. We'll see what all this is about, see what this rubbish is all about then. So went in and sat down. I was expecting it to be some kind of group where somebody was doing the do of talking to spirit or talking to dead people or whatever it was going to be. Turned out it was a training session where the first half of the evening was, this is what you're going to do, this is how it works, blah, blah, blah. And the second half of the evening was, now you're going to have a go. So I sat and listened, and I'm not a closed-minded person. I like to think I can understand who's doing what. But sat and listened. And the more this lady talked, the more I just thought, wow, I'm not sure if she believes this herself or if she's just conning these people for the money that we've paid. Because I got more and more annoyed as it went through. I was quite angry with the fact that she was charging for these people to do something that clearly nobody could do. And this was, it was all just seemed really wrong to me. But then we went for break. We all went outside and we were standing and chatting and that kind of thing. And I said, I don't want to go back in again. This is making me feel, really uncomfortable. Don't want to do it. And they all convinced me to go and give it a go. Go on. You may as well now. Yeah. You go and have a go and all that kind of stuff. So I did. And there was an older chap that was there in the room, and he saw that I pulled back and I was sitting away. Everybody broke off into little pairs and groups and things like that, and he saw that I'd broken away and that I was sort of trying to hide and avoid it, to be honest. And he came down and sat with me, and he really calmly just said, hold this. So I did. I held his watch, and he just said, right, tell me how you feel. And I said, well, I don't know what you mean. He said, no, tell me, how are you feeling now? What's different? How do you feel within yourself? I said, well, a bit nervous, really. I feel a bit anxious again. And he said, okay, right. Now, start to imagine, he said, that somebody's talking to you, that somebody's behind you. Start to imagine that and talk to them. He said, who have you got? And I said, well, I don't know, we'll say it's a fella. It's a bloke. Okay. Is he young or old? I said, he's young. Dark hair. Okay. And then it went on and on with all these different questions, and he led me on with all these questions. And I could really feel that there was this man standing there that was putting these different scenes in my head as well. And I could see that there was a scene by a road, and that there was a lot of panic and a lot of anxiety and all that kind of thing going on with this guy. And I was like, this is really weird. This is really odd that I know that. It was like I was remembering it for him, And he said, the guy that I was talking to, he started laughing. He said, yeah. He said, I knew he'd come through to you. He comes through for all the newbies every single time. He likes to do it and freak people out. And I said, well, congratulations, because he's definitely freaked me out, because I want to know what that was now. I was like, what's that all about? And he told me his name and told me this chap's name. And Peter, or what have you, Peter Richards, I think he said it was. But he said, that's my friend, Peter Richards. So we were sat chatting about all of this, and he was explaining of what I'd just done, and that I'd opened up, and that I'd allowed spirit to communicate, and all this, that, and the other. I'm thinking, oh mate, you've joined in on this as well. You've fallen in with this bunch as well. And I really wasn't sold on it, even though I'd seen it. I wasn't convinced with him. And with that, then my friend came down from the other end of the room where she'd been working in a pair. And it was a big village hall. And she just came up and she said, look, I'm really sorry, but I need to say to you guys, and I don't know why, but I need to say the name Peter Richards. Can't tell you why. And that was the end of me. I was like, no, that's, no, you must, no. Because there was no way that she could have heard it either from the other end of the room. So I did the whole thing then of pumping them for information, saying, well, have you guys set this up or something then? Have you talked to them? Have they talked to you? You know, I really still wasn't that convinced with it. But it sparked my interest. It piqued my interest. And I thought, oh, hang on a minute. There's something in there. I want to know how I knew that information. And ended up going back. I wasn't working at the time. I was off ill still with my chest. So I ended up going back again and again to different to the same group for a couple of months. I went there, and that started to spark my interest off with different people and different mediums working, doing their own events and doing sort of services, sort of shows and things like that. So I can remember then, after it was 2 months after my initial group that I'd been to, and I went to see a medium that I'd seen on the telly. I went to see her down in Cardiff. She was doing an event, and I went down on my own and sat there in the audience. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, God blimey, she's getting all this info. She's talking about all these different things, and all this stuff that she can do. And I was thinking, right, as she was explaining it. And then she came to me first off, straight away. And she started chatting to me, talking to me with information about a guy that had lived with us when I was growing up. And he'd lived with us for a while. And she started chatting about him. And she was saying how he smelled nice and what he looked like. And she was telling me things that I had done in my life and things that he'd seen me doing as well, which was just fab. And I was like, okay, so this is what they do then. This is the way it's supposed to be done. Nice, like that. But it was still something that they were doing. She then said to me, she said, oh, hang on a minute. They're telling me you're a medium as well. And I said, nah. She said, yeah, you are. They said you've started your training. They're pleased you've started your training at last. Now your chest is sorted. At last you've started your training. And I said, nah, it's nothing to do with me. No, not one of them. She said, yeah, how many groups have you been to? And I said, 2. She said, well, there you go. You've started. That's it. She said, you're going to be doing this. You'll be doing what I'm doing now. You'll be standing up, talking to spirit. What's weirder is you're going to be working with me, she said. And that was the point there. I was like, yeah, okay, all right. Take a seat, like you thanks. I didn't buy into that one at all. And she said, oh, well, hang around. You need to stay after the show. I need to talk to you because apparently we're working together, mate. And I said, nah, okay, all right. I hung around a little bit, and I was about for sort of 10, 15 minutes. And I hung around, kept looking at her, and I thought, no, I'm not stopping. This is too far for me. This is too much of a leap of anything. So I left, went away, but carried on with going to different going to different shows and different groups. And it then happened that at any time that I went anywhere near somebody else that was a medium, the very first thing that they would say is they come up and go, oh, you're going to be doing this, don't you? This is what you're going to be doing. And this is what you get known for as well, was what they kept saying, which was a really, really weird concept. this is what you're going to get known for. So then I kept count. So every time I went to one of these things, and I'd go home and I'd say to my friend, that's another one, that's another one, that's another one. And I had 10 of these messages in a row of all of these people saying to me, you know this is what you're going to be doing, don't you? You know this is what you're doing, what you're meant to be doing. And I completely didn't believe it, not at all. So it was almost a year after that initial time that I went to that first group. It was around a year later. And I found myself, I realised that I was filling in the self-assessment tax form to register myself as a self-employed psychic medium, which for a financial services manager was the weirdest thing ever, of having found myself having done that. And it was a year later that I went self-employed. And the weird turnaround with that one was that another 2.5 years after that, I found myself standing behind the curtains on the main stage at this event with however many hundreds of people out front, sort of 300-400 people out the front. And the lady from the telly was introducing me as her mate from Newport, Dave. And the whole thing just felt like a really weird place to be. Even to the point where I'd take a part-time job to help out with the money and help out paying the bills and things like that. And every time I looked at, okay, well, I'm enjoying that job, let's take that further, let's increase the hours, or let's go full-time, let's make a career on that path, it would stop. So the DIY chain that I was working for 15 hours a week went bust. When I asked to go full-time, they said, yeah, you can have full-time. We'll start next week. It went bust. Now, I'm not saying that was for me and for my benefit, because it was a lot of jobs, do you know what I mean? But it was just weird how my life wasn't meant to have any of that in it. And it kept spinning it back again on me and spinning it round on me for the different elements that I'm supposed to be doing with what I do now work-wise, which was really, really odd. It was a really weird thing. See, it varies with what you see with different people. You can get, if I'm sat doing one-to-ones or sat doing that kind of scenario, yeah, it varies with different people, really. In doing one-to-ones, you have, for one person, you can sit there and you'll be able to, it's as if you know them, know everything about them, even, being able to tell them all, sort of every little bit of even thought pattern that, hang on a minute, you need a wee, so we need to stop. Even little things like that, where you can feel all of that. Then when their loved ones come forward and they start coming in, it can be in a different way to how it would be with somebody else as well. So every single time that I sit down with a new client, it's that their loved ones can come in a completely different dynamic. Somebody can come in where you're sitting there and literally it's as if another person walks in the room. You can see them clearly, you can feel them, you can smell them, you can literally you can pick up any form of information about that person because you can see it all there. Then the next person that you sit and talk to, you may only get a sense of the person that's communicating with you, where you just feel little bits of information that they're talking about with the client, or little things that they've seen, where you just get a little bit of a sense of it, almost like a memory that they have, but little drips and drabs of it. So it totally varies with all the different people. There's all the different senses that you can get, which is sort of your clairvoyance, where you see spirit, or your clairaudience, where you hear them, the clairsentience, where you're sensing, all the different sort of clair abilities, and I find for me there's no set way with it. Sometimes somebody will be in while I'm in the toilet before the client's even started, before I've even started talking to them, and I've got mum with me while I'm in the loo, you know. And you think, oh yeah, stop looking, I'm busy, you know. Come back in a minute, give me a minute, go and wait in the room, you know. We sort of send them off. But so you get all these different ways in which they communicate. Other people come forward with massive amounts of emotion, obviously, because they're there with their loved ones, or they're upset to do with something that's gone on, or it's love that's coming forward, and you can be sat there sobbing at the same time with them, because you can feel it. It's as if you're going through it with them. So it totally depends on the person that you're sitting talking to as to whether they're ready for it as well, because sometimes spirit won't come forward for that person if it's going to upset them further, or if it's going to make life complicated for them, or if it's going to make things, you know, if it's not going to help them, then they won't come forward and be present, because it's too upsetting, you know. So you get just little bits of senses or little bits of feeling, as opposed to others that are quite used to it and are okay with the chatting and that are all right for talking, where the connection can be an awful lot stronger, you know, where they come through. But it totally depends. Sometimes you'll feel them physically, so you can physically feel how they passed. And quite often with myself, with my lungs or my chest, and I'll think, oh, is that me having a heart attack, or is that person that I'm talking to? You know, because you feel it on your own body. It's like they use you as a template sort of feel, you know, for communicating. And you quite often feel like that, or lightheaded or giddy. And it takes it out of you as well. It leaves you really tired in communicating with them like that, where they come in and borrow a bit of you. But yeah, so they're all different. To start with, I was just experiencing stuff within the class, within the classroom. And I was realizing that it was only when I was going into these groups that I used to go in and I'd sit there and I'd see these things and do these things, and then I'd come away again afterwards. I wasn't getting any sense of feelings of anything going on externally to being within the group. It wasn't till sort of 4 or 5 months in that I realised that if I didn't take my ring off, things weren't happening outside of the events. So we'd arrive for these classes, and you had to take an object off and put it on the table in the middle, so that everybody could then hold on to it and connect with you, you know. So I used to, I'd go in and I'd take my ring off, put it on the table, I'd open up, I'd do my thing, I'd learn how to speak to spirit and how to communicate with this and get this information and how to dig around it all. And then I'd shut down, put it back on again and go home. And I realised that I was triggering myself with this. So it then became that the more that I practiced, the more I would then take that off, go in and do my thing, put it back on again, and I'd shut myself back down again. So I wasn't getting other things happening. I'm not one of these people that sees spirit in Tesco, you know? I'm not one of these people that senses things like that out and around, because I've got that on and that's my protection sort of feel, you know? So on a self sort of development basis, I had that in place. But it was really ironic almost that I was about 6 months or so in from the training. From in my developing and that kind of thing. It was about 6 months or so before I sat there in the car waiting for a friend that I'd dropped off. And I suddenly realised and thought to myself, hang on a minute. So I talk to people when they've died. That means that when I die, I'm going to be able to talk to people as well. 6 months. I'm not a slow person, but it took me, literally, I sat there and I had a proper face plant moment as well, where I was thinking, I cannot believe it has taken me that long to actually realise that there's something afterward. Up until that point, it had just been me talking to people that had died. It was just something that I could do. You know, from there, it was something I was learning how to do. It was something I was experiencing. But it wasn't, it literally, I was really quite disappointed in myself that it had taken me such a long period of time to cotton on to that as well. But yeah, but to the point where I did a show the one evening, it was a charity event, there was sort of 120 odd people, and I was walking back and forth and I was saying, I've got a lady, she's not very old, and the energy wasn't connecting for me, and I was really freaking out. I was thinking, all these people here, and I look like a right numpty. You know, I was really worried. And I suddenly realised that I had that on. So slipped it off in my pocket, and I literally stood there and went, okay, her name's Bev. She was a mother of 2 boys. She's looking after her son and named them all as well. I'd built up so much energy to try and bring her through before opening myself up properly that when I did, boom, and it all came through. And we had a really good evening. It wasn't amazing, you know, that you do your best for it. It wasn't like the be all and end all, but it was just incredible with her as a connection that I'd built that sort of power up with her to be able to literally talk about the ins and outs of everything with this lady and bring it all through. But it was because I'd forgotten to take that off. It was really weird, really odd. I haven't been frightened by spirit. I've had feelings where I've thought, oh, I don't like that. But for me, it's never really been something where I've thought, oh, there's something evil or something nasty or something horrible there. I've had instances where I've thought, oh, that's not nice, that's not comfortable, but I've got quite a rational head with it, so I'll sort of dissect it almost, and I'm like, hang on a minute, why do you feel like this? Why are you making me feel frightened and scared? Why am I feeling the anxiety? A lot of the time it can be do with the person that has passed, where maybe they had mental health issues, or maybe they passed in the way in which they passed. It's the feeling that you're getting the same as the way in which, you know, something happened to them that was traumatic, obviously. So it's really important to remember that, for me personally, that the whole good and evil thing doesn't equate. I'm not a heaven and hell, or that kind of scenarios don't sort of feature for me. It's only people that have passed, and if they were messed up or they were a bit screwed up in the head before they went, then yeah, you can feel that with them. But I always then question with them as to what you're doing now, or what sort of healing has gone on with you, or what therapy have you had since you died, or what enlightenment have you had, almost, you know? Because people do, after they've had something like that happen, in my mind, they become a little bit more, their perspective tends to shift when they're no longer living on this plane. Do you know what I mean? So I tend to try and get a little bit behind it, as to if they've done things that were nasty or horrible, have a really good dig around and say, okay, well, what learning have you had from that then? Or have you got, apologies, or have you said sorries, or what have you had to do to make amends for it, kind of feel, you know? So I've never had anything frighten or scare me. I've had, I mean, as a kid, I used to run up the stairs. I could never walk up the stairs. I always used to have to run because of whatever was behind me. But I've never really had that sort of sense in a proper spiritual environment. I've had I don't like you, what are you all about? But I've never had anything that's made me feel, no, that's evil, that's horrible, you know? I've got quite a scientific approach with it, mind-wise. My belief is that we're all made up of energy. That's what we are. And when our physical self goes, when our body goes, the energy then continues. It's transferred into a different form, into a different format. So you cease being a physical self, but you're then able to continue as being an energy. So your core thoughts and your essence and that kind of thing just carries on. So it's still able to be around what's going on here. It's still able to see what's happening. you're still able to be involved in things as well from an energy basis, which is where you get things like the electric stuff, electrical, equipment and things like that being able to be played with, where you've got your EVP or your the lights flickering, or all those sorts of general bits and bobs, but also where people can then see lights and colours moving, because it's just on the outskirts of what we would class, I suppose, as our reality, really. There have been a few instances that have left me scratching my head, where I've been chatting to little old ladies and they go, "Oh, right, gotta go, bingo's gonna start now." And they'll walk out, and then you're like in the middle of doing a consultation almost, and they've gone, they've walked off because bingo started. Thanks very much, and you've got the loved one sitting there in the chair, and they're laughing because Mum used to go to bingo all the time, But so you almost imagine this cosmic bingo caller, and so somebody's working in the bingo house, somebody else is, cleaning the tables or whatever it is that they're all doing. But I've for me, the concept of heaven and all that kind of thing hasn't really sat in with who I'm communicating with or who I'm talking to. I know they're in a better place. I know they're in a good place. I know there's no pain and there's nothing that's hurting while they're there. When they come through and communicate with us, they can show us the pain and show us what hurt. But for them on a full-time basis, they're all right and they're in a good place. But it's one of those things that I think I'll only ever know when I get there. I don't consider myself learned enough to be able to say that's what it is, because until I'm there, I'm not going to know, So. You've got the Mexican belief that they become the forgotten people. So for the Dias de los Muertos celebration, they've got the orange and the purple colours. The orange is for the people that are remembered. So they've still got somebody alive on the earth who remembers them firsthand. And then the purple colour represents the people who haven't got anybody left. So this would be sort of your great-great-grandparents or or whatever that hasn't got anybody left living, where they then drift off from the afterlife. So it's almost like the two-tier thing, and then the third step, when nobody's left, they drift off altogether. So there's that sort of theory with it as well, which is fascinating anyway, with the way that people drift off. But then if you've got somebody, so for my opinion with haunted houses and those kind of places, it's when there's a focus of energy going somewhere, where everybody thinks that they've spoken to a certain celebrity that passed. It's because that person is receiving all the energy and all the thought patterns, and it's being sent to them, that energy is there, and it's able for them to be, to use it and to continue on in a way of their sort of spirit is able to continue on, and their essence is to be able to continue on because the energy is getting transferred over and getting sent to them. There's that whole sort of concept with religion and churches and things like that, and like you can walk into one building that's a church, and it just feels like a building because it's been, if it's been empty for years and that kind of thing, and it's just bricks and mortar. Whereas you can go into another church that during a high mass, a high Catholic mass, I'll sit there tingling all the way through that, and it's a wonderful energy and it's beautiful to sit in. But the question there for me, which I'll never be able, I'm not going to be able to answer, but all the while I'm alive, is that, is that energy going off to the big, the big JC, or is it, just the fact that everybody is sending that healing, or everybody is sending that energy in there, and it all being transferred out as well? It's sort of one of those unknown questions for me, but it feels amazing. People say, "Oh, bet you burn when you go in a church, don't you?" And nope, quite like it. Give me a nice, Christmas, the mass and all that kind of thing, and going into a church, and it feels very calming and it feels very soothing. But there's almost like that intent from people to create that feeling in there anyway. This is a sacred space. This is a hallowed space. And and it creates that energy as well. From my belief system anyway, from what I've sort of learned for myself over the last 10 years of exploring that kind of thing, because of course previously with churches and family and all those scenarios, I never went. I went to church for funerals, and that was about it. Carol service occasionally to keep my grandmother company, but not a religious family at all. So it's been interesting to sort of explore all of those, and to feel it as well is very cool. I'm absolutely 100% believer that everybody has the ability to communicate with spirit. It's only become a more recent and a more, in the last sort of 120 odd years, as a Western culture, that we don't communicate with our ancestors. When you look back at sort of the ancient rituals within the without sort of East Asia and those kind of places, they will actually still. There's the one culture that still keep the bodies of their loved ones, and they keep them and bring them out on the anniversary of their passing, and sit and talk to them and chat to them, and then put them away again for another year. Consulting the ancestors was something that human race was doing just as a day-to-day thing across the globe. It's only for my way of thinking that I can't say Victorian, but it's almost like that more modern age that we've gone through, where it's been poo-pooed and it's been put off as witchcraft, and it's been put off as something that needed to have been done behind closed doors, and all that kind of sort of stigma that was attached to it, that only weirdos did it, or only people have a gift. When somebody says to me, "Oh, you've got a special gift there," I don't feel that I've got that gift. I don't feel that it's a gift. It's a skill that I've worked on. It's a skill that I've practiced. It's something that I've trained myself to be able to understand the feeling of. The only time that I would ever say that I've got a gift is probably the gift that I've got of being able to have empathy with them and have patience with them as well within what I'm doing. I won't just sit there and fire out information that I'm getting. But that's more probably about my personality rather than it being a gift. I haven't yet met anybody at a training group that hasn't been able to pick up on spirit when they've come along for a thing. Just haven't yet. I'm not saying everybody definitely go to a group and you will definitely get it, because it depends on how it works for you. But culturally speaking, I think we've put it off to the side. But on a natural basis, I think it's something that we're all born with and that we're all able to do. Most often kids are aware of spirit, and the energy of kids as well can increase spirit activity within a house or within an area. Quite often you'll get people messaging saying, "Oh, can you come to the house, please? We've got a poltergeist, or we've got a boogeyman," or whatever. My first question is, how many kids have you got in the house that are approaching puberty now? Because the chances are you've got at least one. And that's just bringing up the energy of the house and bringing the energy through. Doesn't mean to say that it's bringing spirit in, but their energy itself is more likely to have spirit contact coming in. You'll go and sit in the house and it turns out that it's Gran or dear old dad from, he's coming in and looking out for the place, or he's looking after it. But because you've got somebody going through puberty in the house, or somebody that's pregnant, that kind of thing, it amplifies the energy up, and it just means that people that aren't attuned to it, people that aren't aware of their own ability, start picking up on stuff. So they'll see things, or they'll hear people calling them, or they'll have the different experiences of, the shadows moving, or the TV turning itself off, and those things happening, when in fact it's just them being a medium. It's just them doing what I believe everybody can do, which is sense the energy patterns that are going on around them. It was really weird, because I sort of started off on just going to this group and just thinking, okay, well, this is just something I'm doing, and then realized and found myself in this position where I almost had to come out again, and I had to sort of tell everybody that, yeah, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm into, which was a really weird concept of having to go through all that sort of, change in perception of myself as well. Like, okay, I'm going to be this person that everybody's going to look a bit odd at. But you try and put an innocent face on it, try and put a brave face on it, but it is definitely with innocence. I had friends that on the one night, on a night out in a club, and I had one friend who I was chatting to, and when I said to him that this is what I was doing now and this is what was going on, he walked away. He just turned and walked away from me. And I was quite perplexed with that. Messaged him on Facebook, and I was like, oh, everything was okay with you the other night. Didn't mean to weird you out, didn't mean to do anything odd. And he just messaged back with, I can't be friends anymore with you. I'm sorry, I don't associate with con artists. That really stung. He wasn't an important person in my life. He's not somebody that I've missed. We have talked to each other afterwards as well, but he chooses to completely omit it. Just omit that whole sort of area of my life now. So it's a bit awkward there with him, but I've moved on, moved separate ways. But it's quite interesting as well as being single, where I'm on Tinder or I'm on, and I'll start chatting to somebody on an app or online dating and on there. And you're sitting and you're chatting and it's all great and everything's marvellous. And you think, God blimey, yeah, there you are. I've been looking for you. You're lovely. And they find out what you do. And I always have to sort of brace myself a little bit, because I have had people turn around and go, no, sorry, not going to happen. And they'll walk away. They'll block you, or and you do feel stigmatized by that then, almost. And you've got to remember that at the end of the day, they've got their culture, they've got their belief systems and their cultural upbringings and that kind of stuff. And the same as I don't want theirs to conflict with mine, I've got to accept that mine could very well conflict with theirs. I will be quite happy if they have their system, I have mine. But finding that harmony almost to live between the two, it should be something that's there as a mature acceptance, but in reality, it's more about challenging people's belief systems, and I don't think they like that. People don't tend to have that sort of broader view a lot of the time, but it is very difficult to you've got to brace yourself when you tell people what you do, because normally the first thing that they turn around and go is, oh, well, I don't believe in all that rubbish. Well, thanks very much, because that's not only my full-time employment, that's my belief system, that's my life, that's everything that I stand for and I try to bring to other people. And what I feel I've got there as I'm able to give. And you've just completely shut me down on that. And not only just shut me down on it, you've undermined it and called it complete rubbish. And that's not fair, Rabbis, priests, other people that work within their environment, within their belief system, within their religious belief system, you wouldn't walk up to a nun and say to her, what you got that on for? Load of rubbish, that, don't believe in any of that. You would respect that she's doing her thing, she's living her life her way. But people don't have that same concept with people that work within a spiritual environment now. It's becoming more acceptable socially, even in the 10 years that I've now been working within this field. It's become more socially acceptable, but there are still the pockets of people that will quite happily berate you or bully you on Facebook as well. When you put yourself out there or create, online content, explaining to people. I did a video recently where I was explaining the difference between psychic work and mediumship and how the two are different areas but work within the same sort of realm, where I was explaining that. And you get comments on there. A lot of people very positive. Oh, this is great, lovely, thank you for explaining, and all that kind of thing. And then you get the pockets of people on there that aren't just negative about it. They'll be negative about you in a personal way. And it really crosses the line then into trolling and being bullied. And it seems to be socially acceptable to bully a medium that puts themselves out there. oh, well, what a load of crap, what a load of rubbish, you know? And that is really hard. It's something that I have personally struggled a lot with. There's a lot of sleepless nights that have gone into it, and that's not being dramatic into it. When you're laying in bed at night and those people's thoughts and those people's comments and the thoughts that they've aired, they stick and they really hurt. To get past that and try to remind yourself that you're not there for them. You're there for the person who's grieving. You're there for the person who's broken and can't get dressed in the morning, yet comes to you for a one-to-one, and you're able to help them put their life back together and get some semblance of normality back for themselves. But it really gets outweighed, because you get those numpties. On a family basis, with entering into this and me going home and saying to my parents, oh, I speak to dead people. From an atheist family, a family of non-believers, the only person in my family that was religious was my grandmother. And she used to go to church, Methodist chapel, and she used to go every single week, and she'd do prayer club during the week and all those kind of things. But the rest of us, not even christened, my brother isn't christened either. We don't have any sort of religious upbringing at all, other than Christmas and Easter eggs, and going home to the family and saying, I can do this, I can do that, I did this, I did that. The family took a very long time in warming to the idea that I seem to be going a little bit weird and I seem to be going off on one. It's quite good now. I mean, my grandmother, she was very accepting of it, and she turned around and said, well, no, I've always believed in that kind of, that is, possible, and that's all absolutely fine. And she was great with it. Whereas I overheard a conversation that my dad was having within the last couple of years. So bearing in mind, I've been doing this now 10 years. And I overheard Dad say, well, I can't say that I'm a believer, but I believe my son. And that was really cool, to sort of know that he now questions. I mean, I'll get questions from the family of, oh, well, did anybody come through then? Did anybody come forward? And I'll talk to them about things that I've learned about my grandparents, or things that I've talked about from within the family, and things that I've learned about from doing this. And they're like, oh yeah, oh well, that was that, oh yeah. And they've kind of started to assimilate it into their own thing. But not at any point, I've been very, very lucky with them, not at any point have any of them turned around and said anything derogatory about it. So I've been really lucky on that score. But the fact that they believe me was what made it all that little bit more special, do you know? It was a very big catalyst, but the whole scenario of being in hospital, like I say, was it was almost like a little holiday for me. It was a novelty. I'd never stayed over in hospital before. So I was chatting with all the guys, I was walking around talking with everybody, and was completely fine. In myself, after that initial sort of 3 or 4 days of everything felt, where I was breathless and I'd lost thought, I wasn't coherent, for a couple of days. But after that, I just felt like I was absolutely fine. It wasn't till I went home. Yes, the nurse had said to me about the scan results of, you need to be in bed until doctor says you can move, don't get up at all. But it wasn't until I went home and I put it into Google, and I typed into Google what a pulmonary embolism was. So typed in there, read what it was, that it was a clot within the lung. Okay, that's fine. Then saw the news reports that the week previously, an athlete from Sweden, I think it was, but a European athlete, she was an Olympian, and she'd passed away from a blood clot in her lung. And I thought to myself, right, okay, well, she's had one. That's just one that she's had. I'd had a massive bilateral pulmonary embolism episode, which basically meant that I'd had loads of them across both of my lungs. Massive means more than 50% of the lung is clotted. And I'd had that on both. The fact that I totally shouldn't be here was kind of emphasised, but took a while to kick in. And then I found myself doing interviews with the university, for the university hospital, because they were interested in how I'd survived. Why are you alive? You shouldn't be here. We don't know how it was that you survived. I still attribute it to a pint of sherry, having thinned my blood enough to have tided me over until I got the medical attention. There was a pathologist, a leading pathologist in Germany, that wanted to examine my corpse. When he saw the scan results, he was like, I want to see him because we want to know what caused this massive episode to happen. He was astonished to learn that I was still alive, but that was what brought on then the interview through the university, was all of this sort of amazement. And for me, going through all of that, I was just a little bit oblivious to it all, really. And I just thought, I didn't feel that rough. I didn't feel that bad. I thought I was having a panic attack, you know? So for it to turn around, it was an afterthought as to how close I'd come, and to how serious it had really been. The whole medical scenario of how everything panned out, it gave me a sort of change in perspective of life, really. I thought, blimey, I could have been gone then. What am I doing? What am I doing? You know? And made me question my life more than it made me. It wasn't like I woke up from the hospital bed and said, oh, there we go. You know, I saw an angel. You know, there was nothing like that for me. So there wasn't a real epiphany with it. But the growth that came off the back of it, the fact that I'd been sort of prompted to keep the investigation going, and that I'd heard the voice, and that, that night where I was ill, being sort of being pushed towards, make the phone call, ring the doctor, don't do this on your own, don't try and go to sleep, ring the doctor. It was almost like there was that sort of support sort of feel going on in there, and that made me want to keep exploring it. That fueled me to wanting to keep exploring. Maybe there was somebody looking out for me, maybe there was something going on or something happening, and that sort of started off my journey of learning it for myself and taking those steps towards it all, really. There's in it being in it being like a moment of awakening, there wasn't one for me. It was a more gradual thing. But the interesting part was, if I'd ever gone for a reading and somebody had sat there telling me stuff, I wouldn't have believed it. I don't imagine for a minute that I would have even got involved in what they were saying and what they were trying to do. I wouldn't have bought into any of it. And I know that sounds a little sad, but I wouldn't have bought into it. The whole build-up to discovering that you could speak to spirit and that they were there, I was ready to accept that because of all the medical situation, because of the little voice that I'd had in my head, because of going through all those experiences. It was as if I'd been set up to be open to it, you know, to sort of allowing that in rather than it being a great big epiphany. Clairvoyant means somebody that can communicate with spirit using the clair abilities, which is the clairvoyant, which means see spirit, clairaudient, which means hear them, blah, blah, blah. There's loads of different clair abilities. A medium is just the modern day term for that. It's the same thing. You've got the difference then with psychic, which is where you would look at people's lives and people's futures. And you're able to sort of see events that are coming or events that are on their way. and predict those, that falls under the psychic umbrella, whereas the sort of the mediumship is the clairvoyant, it is the communicating with spirit, it is that opening up and making contact with those that have passed. So you've got those sort of two elements both there. You can, again, everybody is able to, I believe, communicate with spirit. Spirit can talk about things that are yet to come, but you need to have practiced that psychic element as well before you start making the predictions, or before you're able to make predictions and see things clearly that are coming as well. So there isn't a difference between mediumship and clairvoyance, it's one and the same thing. So Winterfeld Centre came about through needing somewhere to see my clients, really. Basically wanted somewhere that could house me, house what I do, give me somewhere for the development groups and all that kind of stuff. That then turned into the venue that I found being absolutely ideal. That gave us a whole load of treatment rooms as well. So there's 3 treatment rooms there, as well as a training space. And it worked out that all of the people that are working there, most of them were people that I've either already known from having done readings with them, or that they were coming along to my spiritual development groups anyway. So not only can you have reflexology and have your back massage, but she also does readings part-time as well, every so often, you know. So it developed quite a community there, really. It's been great to get a support group going for working as a medium as well. It's been really good to get that sort of feeling that I'm not on my own, that we are all working in it together. I'm 10 years, celebrating 10 years this year of being a self-employed psychic medium. Absolutely love what I do, love it. It's become more than just my life, it's become my community around me as well now. It's just really cool to be able to communicate and to talk to those that have passed and those that have died, of being able to still chat to them and have them come back and keep their eye, say hello, that kind of stuff. That's really cool. To have that as part of everyday life now. I absolutely love being able to help people. When you've got somebody who has been completely broken, has been through some of the worst things that you can imagine in life, and you're able to sit there and talk to them and sometimes bring through closure, or bring through peace of mind, or just let them know that they're not bonkers and they're not insane with things that they may have been feeling or doing or seeing or experiencing for themselves. It really gives me a massive buzz when you're able to say, somebody will message and say, thank you for what you've done. You've let me sleep. You know, I'm no longer laying awake at night wondering what happened or wondering what went on. They've got that closure and they've got that peace of mind, and I love being able to do that for people. That's magic, really is. I pride myself very much on being open, being honest. If I'm feeling it, I'm feeling it. If I'm not feeling it, I'm not feeling it. And I think it's right for all mediums to be a little bit skeptical of what they're saying, to make sure that what they're saying is right and what they're saying is proper as well. And I think that's really important too. The development aspect as well gives me a massive buzz. People learning how to do it for themselves, learning their own way of how to communicate with spirit and those kind of things. And you see them come in as being a little bit nervous to start with, and oh no, well I can't do that. I just find it fascinating. And then they start picking up information on other people, and they start learning, and then they start bringing spirit through, and they start developing, and they'll sit there and come out with loads of information, and you watch them grow, and you watch them change their life as well, where they, rather than them feeling down and hard done by things that have gone on in their life, they start to accept them as having been learning points in ways that they can help other people as well. And I love being able to sit back and watch people develop like that and learn like that. I think that's proper magic. I also think it's really important for the deaf community to be able to access this kind of thing as well. So I don't think that spirituality should be purely for the hearing community. And I think that's really important. I would say believe in who you are, believe in spirit of to who's around you, talk to your loved ones. It doesn't matter how you communicate with them, even if it's just through thoughts in your head. Speak to your spirit people. They're around, they love you, they know that they know what you're up to, they know that they're still there. Love them as you did when they were here.